entrepreneurs avoid losses. So these are also ways to kanang reduce risk and liability, but this time this is according to Robleski. So he said that there are no guarantees, but there are sensible ways in which entrepreneurs can avoid losses, like he recommends. So first, kay kanang produce a produce a robust business plan. So pag may kag robust kay kanang firm or kanang showing vigor or strength. So sa business, you really need to have a strong or sturdy built business plan. So kanang bang it's like thinking outside the box, kanang mag more on research ka sa imuhang plan. So pagbuhat ani nga business plan, it really requires effort kasi kay kanang dapat jud siya ginapag-isipan, because business project without a plan, or kanang if imuhang plan is poor planning, bisan unsa pa kanindot sa idea sa imuhang business, if poor ang imuhang planning, it can really affect of your profits in the future, and it can hinder your business to success. So pero pag once na kaning na kay robust plan, in doing this, it is worth every bed of sweat of your effort pag na kay robust plan in your business. So it helps na ma-minimize ang risk o ang position sa imuhang business for future growth. So whether imuhang business kay kanang big or small man na siya, ang proper planning is very helpful and very important, o advisable siya para to avoid losses. Next is kanang keep accurate business records and store financial information on a private server and the rest in the cloud. So maintaining or keeping the financial records is very important. Especially for those that are just starting out na mag-business. So we know na dili pod easy mag-keep ng mga financial information, especially sa kanang kanang sa atong technology karon, di ba, na naman po yung mga disadvantages pag maggamit ta. Di ba, sa na-mention ako gahapon about protecting our data, na very rampant na ang cyber attack. So but pag imuhang nakip ang imuhang mga financial information, mga records nimo, it is very sensible. It is a very sensible way to avoid losses of your business, kasi it helps you na ma-understand ang current situation sa imuhang business. So if you really want na ma-protect imuhang asset, pwede ka mag-hire ng kanang professional IT to protect your assets, and then mag-keep sa imuhang mga business records. Next is maintain a low threshold for accounts receivable. So kaning accounts receivable, pag sinabing accounts receivable, this is a policy and a procedure na kanang ginagamit sa business to manage overdue customers' invoices or non-payment. So gamiton nimo ni na process to make sure na your customers pay their invoices no matter what. And kanang once manggod na kanang naakay lower accounts receivable, I mean dapat dili kanang taas ang imuhang accounts receivable. Pag lower imuhang accounts receivable, mas better. This means na kanang imuhang customers are paying you quickly and that you are not owed that much money. So if imong business kay growing, makita nimo sa imuhang accounts receivable balance na nagagrow siya over time as you get more customers and sell more those to your customers. Next is to limit or eliminate loans. So same siya sa recommendation no sa gahapon ni kay Hasan Mansur o kani kay Robles Tina, mag-limit sa loans because it is one of the major advices to entrepreneurs to avoid loss of your business. Next is to diversify income streams. So it is recommended to draw earnings from two or more sources rather one sources only. Kasi kapag ikaw ay diversify ng imong income streams, it protects your business against the loss. So makahelp pa ka na makasave at maka-invest sa imuhang future pag once na na-diversify nimo imuhang income streams. Next one is to buy insurance. So very vital in every businesses because insurance brings peace of mind. So 'di ba pag once na ang business na ay insurance, dili na ka problema if na ay mahitabo sa imong business or sa company kung naa kay insurance. Next is build a financial reserve. So this is also known as retained earnings. So ito siya ay kanang portion sa imuhang business profits na kanang giset aside na nimo. This is to strengthen your business financial position. So ang reserve kadalasan ginagamit sa kanang purchase ng fixed assets, to repay debts, or to fund expansions for bonuses and kanang mga dividend repayment. So kanang some experts gina-recommend nila na you reserve at least covered sa imuhang 3 and 6 months of operating expenses. So example kanang if you need like butang na to 50,000 to survive your business every month, then kanang you need to save na 300,000 na ma-keep on hand to meet short-term emergency funding needs. So on 300,000, so na-cover na dito ang 3 and 6 months sa imong operating expenses every monthly. Para ma-meet pud nimo ang unexpected future cost or kanang mga financial obligations in the future. The next is to perform regular quality control tests on everything your small business relies on. So quality control. So when it comes to business, this is a process which business seeks para ma-ensure na ang quality sa imuhang product ay ma-maintain and ma-improve. So this is very important para ma-meet ang kanang expectations sa imuhang customer. So these practices ay para ma-make sure mo na your product and service of your business meets the quality requirements and standards defined for the product or the service. So kana siya, so kato na mga recommendations are very helpful to every future entrepreneurs and to every business owner because kabalo man ta na every business na faces risks that could present threats to its success. So diba, so given this recommendation para ma-reduce ang risk and liability, so makatabang siya kanina mga practices o mga processes, mga methods and tools para ma-manage ang risk. So business owners that have identified the risk will be better prepared and have na sila more cost-effective way na ma-deal nila ang risk. So well-managed assets and liabilities increase business profit. So next reporter.
Good afternoon. I will be the next reporter. My name is Jessa B. Alojado. My report is about the strategy for dealing with risk and uncertainty. So risk can be defined as imperfect knowledge where the probabilities of the possible outcomes are known and uncertainty exists when these probabilities are not known. So to better understand, risks are more predictable variables and the uncertainties are those unpredictable variables. For example, if a person says, I am uncertain about the weather tomorrow, so that statement is only a free statement na hindi niya alam kung ano ang mangyayari sa future or tomorrow if may certain probabilities ba of raining, cold, cloudy, or hot weather. The rain, cold, and hot weather cannot be considered as risk because the person didn't state something that would give him or her a significant chance of injury or loss. But if that person simply stated his or her uncertainty of the weather because the weather is unpredictable. But when the same person said that I am planning for a picnic for tomorrow and there's a risk of rain, so that's the time that he or she can be exposed to significant chances of loss or injury or consequences. So the person has something to lose now because if there's a risk of rain, then that person may or may not be able to have a picnic. So if that person is really firm about his or her decision of having a picnic, then he or she is open for the possibilities of taking the risk of rain. With the possibility of that risk, syempre may plano ka na beforehand kung ano ang gagawin mo kapag uulan. So thus, taking a risk can now be defined as exposing one's self to a significant chance of injury or a loss. So we may schematically think of firms operating in markets marked by different levels of risk and uncertainty in the risk matrix below. So few of these are shown in the risk uncertainty matrix with examples from different markets. So as you see in the slide, an example of a situation with low risk and low uncertainty would be the local ski area. This is a service firm with many small customers, stable input prices, and little potential for competition or regulatory changes. Others think that local ski areas are not profitable for them due to other existing ski areas. So other ski areas do not usually have competitors near the area. Then when there are changes in economic prices like increase in fuel prices, which is very likely to happen almost every day, they are not influenced by that change. So if you talk about snow, syempre hindi sa lahat ng panahon is may lalabas sa snow sa mga lugar na may winter season. So that risk is expected, but they can do natural resource-intensive adaptation and ecological mitigation like the use of water-intensive snowmaking capabilities like machines na nagagamit lang og water to create snows or ice. Then, to compensate for the unreliable snowfall. And to other countries na walang snow, there are also water ski resorts, but their risks and uncertainties would be different. So next is an example of a situation characterized by low uncertainty and high risk, which is the raw material extraction or a gold mining. We defined uncertainty earlier as when the probabilities of the possible outcomes are not known or unpredictable. So mining has low uncertainties because almost all of its risks are known. Mining always have issues, especially in regulations of laws, gold price, and geological areas to use. So this business specifically needs to have license to operate, especially gikan sa government, then ESG, environment, social, and governance. So nowadays, ang atong mabantayan is the government needs those mining companies na kailangan na ana sila license to operate. So they also need to merge business to get bigger to attract generalist investors and capital, have cost containment or maintaining expense levels to prevent unnecessary spending in order to survive in a sustained low gold price environment and other risks. The next is a firm competing in a market with rapidly changing technology, and strategic alliance would be an example of high high risk and high uncertainty, like I know high uncertainty and low risk, like the streaming music. So there is high uncertainty because the entry of competitors in the industry and the need for strategic alliance matters much. So they are sensitive to changing technology and rely on numbers of users and subscribers. So nowadays, streaming music services like Spotify and Apple Music, they are very useful, especially in those music lovers. So almost all of us likes or loves to listen music, diba? So it is unpredictable to know if there will be another streaming music service that will enter and replace other services. So, and if the users of that certain music service will increase or decrease over time. So, there is a low risk because they are not affected with the sales and prices of physical albums, and fees of the artist are only on the basis of overall streams of users. So finally is the competition in airplanes or airline markets would be an example of a situation with high risk and high uncertainties, because the entry of and exit of the competitors matter much, and they are sensitive to regulatory changes. It also has high risks, and since they are affected by exchange rates and prices of jet fuel. However, the position in the matrix can change with the conditions. So in airline markets, they are at high risk and high uncertainty because there are certain variables that matters much to them, like the prices of fuels, the exchange rates, and the entry of competitors that might affect the revenues that might enter in the company. So next slide, please. Next is Freiberg R. 2021 expressed four strategies in dealing with risk and uncertainty. These were benchmark strategy, final hedging strategy, flexible strategy, and operational hedging strategy. So first is the benchmark strategy. The first strategy follows the strategy that would be optimal or ideal if risky variables are close to their expected values and uncertainty shocks do not threaten the firm's survival. When they have observed na ang firm nila ay malapit ng apektuhan because of certain risky variables, they immediately follow the standard strategy that would come to an optimal result after their evaluation or comparison from other reference. So it is crucial for them to know the magnitude or level of shock that the firm will experience if they will face a risk. So also the possibility of the firm to raise capital even in adverse states of the world where success is sometimes unfavorable. So it is like identifying the best or like the ideal way to compete in the market. So benchmarking itself means measuring the performance of a business or firm against a competitor in the same market. So this will give them better understanding of the business's performance and potential. Like they are making their competitor as the point of reference or basihan nila in making strategic plan in order to improve the performance of their own company. Then firm that allows this strategy also do sensitivity tests wherein they would measure how the impact of uncertainties of one or more input variables can lead to uncertainties on output variables. Then if we consider other circumstances when firms is very close to experience risk, it would be possible that during the process, the firm identify winning strategies that is outside their own industry that successful companies also use. So then apply them to their own strategic process even without letting any risks and uncertainty considerations affect their fundamental decisions. It is also common sa ilaha na mag-compare og strategic goals for them to identify new strategic options na mas ideal na gamiton para sa ilahang company or strategic plans. The next would be the financial hedging strategy. So a hedge is an investment that is made with the intention of reducing the risk of adverse price movements in an asset. So from the word itself, financial and hedging is to reduce the risk of financial problems or financial risks. So the core of the financial hedging strategy is that it makes the value of the firm less sensitive to changes in risk factors. For example, in an airline, the effects of jet fuel prices on profits can be hedged or limited. Pero there are still other risks and uncertainty na hindi madaling kontrolin or limit the risk in financial markets like ash clouds, terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center, or the entry of a new competitor. So hindi natin masasabi kung kailan mangyayari, like for example, there is a new competitor in the market. And that would mean na may kahati ka na sa lahat, or even worse, they would choose other companies since it has lower pricing. So kapag may papasok na naman na bagong competitor, then more companies would compete for the same market share. Then because of that, companies would make strategic plan like lowering the price while giving quality services. Syempre, as a customer and consumer, you would definitely choose the company that offers lower prices, and because of that, mapipilitan din ng ibang companies na pantayan yung prices. So the general price level will go down. So if that happens, the airline company would be facing financial damages and is susceptible to more financial risk if not immediately responded. Then other than that, the investors and money managers use the hedging practice to reduce and control their exposure to risk. In order to counteract the risk of adverse price movements in the market, and the best way to do that is to make another investment in a targeted and controlled way. You will invest in other firm or industry, so when you face financial risk or problems in your main firm, you still have other investments where you still have other funds. So if the risk hover around their expected value, the profits are thus lower under financial strategy. But if lower tail outcomes triggered by risk are a concern, the financial hedging strategy will be preferred. Let's take note that it may also be helpful to distinguish between two reasons for derivatives use. So what concerns us in this strategy is to avoid costly lower tail outcomes that have significant impact on the firm value, and these are the motivations that have been explored mainly in different literatures. So the financial hedging strategy is to create insurance on costly lower tail outcomes that have major impact on firm value and survival. So like the investment you make is your insurance that makes sufficient funds to finance others. And another motivation for using derivatives is to make it easier for you to manage liquidity in the short to medium run. So in order for you to manage your firm in long-term events. Next would be the flexible strategy. Then from the word itself, flexible, as we have discussed from the past lessons, flexible means to adapt to changes that in different circumstances. So the strategy that we call flexible explicitly recognizes the risk factors that can take on different values and that there will be shocks due to uncertainty. So firms following this strategy design operations and processes so as to be able to quickly respond and make the best out of the conditions. So it strives to make profits more responsive to positive shocks and less to adverse shocks. This implies that expected profits for a firm increases as conditions become more and more variable. By adjusting and making the most of favorable conditions, profits increase in good times, and when in bad times, the flexible firm will cut back and thereby limit the risk when it comes a bigger problem. So if there is an open opportunity for the firm, like my biggest opportunity na papasok sa company, of course it would be a great advantage for the company, 'di ba? So they will do their might to open or to grab that opportunity. But if meron silang makita na problem, or then the risk starts to happen, then they immediately think of another way. Like if there will be no solution to that risk, they will immediately cut back or stop the operations. Then, in a highly uncertain and changing environment, like the rapid changes in technology and economy, firms need to have the flexibility to respond to problems speedily. So it is having the capability to identify major changes in the external environment, quickly commit resources to new courses of action in response to those changes, and then also recognize the risk and act accordingly. So this requires firm to find the right balance between committing the resources necessary for them to carry out a decision and avoid na mag-invest ng kanilang pera sa isang hindi magandang project, or ang project na makakabigay ng risk sa kanilang firm or business or company. So if may problema man, they are still able to make solutions and solve the problem accordingly. Flexibility can, for instance, come in different circumstances, like through production processes such as designing operations such that there are low increases in cost as volume surge, then through labor like short-term labor or contractual employees. For example, they don't have kukuha sila ng contractual employees to cut back the cost of payments for employees. Then if there is really a risk, then they will cut off other employees. Then yung ibang employees, so may matitira na lang na maliit na employees. So those employees na matitira will there's a possibility na their working hours will be increased. Then their payments would be the same or will also be increased. Then through leasing rather than owning capacity, or via marketing-related strategies such as an ability to segment different national markets. Then for the last strategy is the flexible hedging strategy. Finally, we draw attention to the operational hedging strategy. So in the financial hedging strategy, the financial assets are reduced or hedged. And here in operational hedging strategy, the operations will be reduced or limited. So this refers to ways of adjusting operations or management processes so as to make the profits of the firm less sensitive to changes in risk factors and uncertainty shocks. So one example of an operational hedging strategy would be to diversify or expand, like what Ms. Bello said yesterday, to diversify as much as possible or expand. Then like hindi lang isang business ang hahawakan mo. So may iba ka pang business that you have invested, pero pwede in the same industry or pwede rin in the other industry or market naman. For example, a car producer might also own a brewer that faces less and different shocks than the car producer. So car producers are more open to a lot of risk but it also gives large profits if successful. But for insurance, pumasok ka in other business different from the first one, kung saan mas less yung risk and uncertainties. So, and there is a good profitability. For example, for another example is yung airlines na bumibili ng very fuel efficient planes. So if they are buying expensive planes with high quality, expected na yon na mas less ang makukuha nilang profit if yung presyo ng fuel is tataas or around average lang. Pero pag bababa naman yung price ng fuel, syempre hindi maapektuhan yung profits nila, pero meron ding possibilities na tataas yung profits. So the more uncertain that becomes and the more difficult it is to access capital, the more appealing the operational hedging strategy becomes. So as you can see on this slide where there is a table that is strategy in the face of risk and uncertainty. So the benchmark strategy is at low risk and low uncertainty. Then the flexible financial hedging, and financial hedging is on high risk and low uncertainty. Then the operational hedging strategy is in the low risk and high uncertainty, and the flexible and operational hedging is at higher risk and high uncertainty. Next slide, please. So in his book Million Dollar Blind Spots 2020 Vision for Financial Growth, Gary Patterson expressed that the best practice in traditional risk management are vitals, but they are not enough to protect a company from economic risk. So he has an explanation of risk uncertainty and business strategy. So according to Patterson G. 2012, Enterprises risk management starts with identify risk and manage it according to the company's risk appetite. Thus, he pointed out other strategies for firm success. These were to identify the risk events, assess the probability of each event, make a cost-benefit analysis of response, alternatives, choose a response, then reassess probability and impact with company response, and the last one is the ongoing monitoring of risk events. First is to identify the risk, so meaning you have to know the possible and potential risks that might or might have already happened to address them. So alamin mo kung ano yung mga risk na papasukan mo sa business. You can even do like brainstorming to generate list of risks. So bakit kailangan mo i-identify yung risk? Para mapag-planuhan mo na kung ano ang maaari mong gawin pag nangyari na. So there are many different types of risks na maaari mong ma-encounter. But example of that risk events like that have big impact to the business are like passing new regulations like the changes in tax payments and rates, then the loss of a key employee, an earthquake, hurricane, flood, or other natural disasters, and maybe an invasion of a hacker. The next is to assess the probability of each event. So you are assessing the likelihood of an event occurring and of a risk event occurring and its consequences. So assessing means you need to measure, weigh, calculate, or consider the probability of risk event from happening. So di pa tapos na mag-identify ng risk event, then after that is kailangan mo na isa-isahin like what risks are most likely or unlikely to happen. Next is to make a cost-benefit analysis of response alternative. So cost-benefit analysis is a process used by business to determine which decisions to make and which decisions you need to avoid or forego. So it's like comparing the projected or estimated cost and benefits your chosen response to determine whether it makes sense from a business perspective. So for example, the risk event is the loss of a key employee in your business. So you are therefore considering whether to hire a new team member. However, the benefits of hiring a new person need to significantly outweigh the associated cost. So dapat mas malaki yung makukuha mong benefit kaysa magagastos. If not now, but for in a long-term benefit. Next is to choose a response. It is simply select the response that best gives you the benefit and less cost. Next would be the reassess probability and impact with company response. After choosing a response, you need to assess again its probability and impact. Reassessing involves identifying the probability of the risk and their potential impact in relation to chosen response in order to control the most significant threats and opportunities that may happen. And the last one would be the ongoing monitoring of risk events. So, ongoing monitoring is very important. So, it would be done to ensure that the risk events will be addressed and prevents its impact to the firm. So, it's a good idea to schedule periodic risk reviews and monitoring ahead of time. There will be you can review the highest probable and largest impact risk along with the mitigation strategy that will allow for continuous improvement of the firm. So hindi porket hindi namang mangyayari ngayon is hindi na mangyayari mamaya, bukas, sa susunod na buwan or sa susunod man na taon. So there will always be instances that you will be surprised that the risk events that you've been anticipating already impacted your firm without you knowing kasi hindi ka nagmo-monitor, so walang information na papasok. So that's why monitoring risk events are very significant. You need to stay updated in order to get an accurate picture of the overall progress and to identify and monitor potential new risks that may arise. Then the next slide, please. Next is the business response to risky events. It is avoidance, reduction, sharing, and acceptance. So avoidance, it is simply to do not do the act which bring forth the risk. So hindi mo gagawin yung responses or actions na makakabigay ng risk sa company mo. So simple lang, if hindi mo alam kung ano ang kalalabasan or if there is surely risk in that strategy or response, then it must be avoided. So it is better to stick to proven and existing strategies rather than adopting new ones in which you don't know the risks. For example, a project team can choose a supplier with a proven track record instead of a new supplier that offers significant price incentives. This is in order to para ma-avoid yung risk of working with a new supplier because hindi mo alam kung paano nagtatrabaho or kung ano hindi mo pa kilala kung ano yung supplier or kung ano ang kaya nilang gawin. Then next is to reduction. Reduce the probability of the event or damage of the event. So this is the most common strategies for handling risk is to reduce the risk to an acceptable level. So since completely eliminating risk is often impossible or too costly, risk mitigation or reducing the risk is a key strategy for most project firms. Kaysa naman palakihin pa ang problema or damage na mangyayari by continuing to eliminate the risk which is costly at some point, it is better to reduce its risk na kung saan there will be cut of cost and you can use that cost to find other opportunities. The next is sharing, which is to spread the risk such as through insurance. So sharing the risk involves shifting the risk to some other entity such as insurance companies. So we do this all the time when we pay insurance premiums like paying a small amount each month. So another is partnering with another company to share the risk associated with a part of the project. So if a risk event occurs, the partner company absorbs all or part of the negative impact of the event. And the last one is acceptance. Acceptance is just to live with the risk or live with it. This involves accepting the risk. After you analyzed all the possible variables, you'll come at some point na you'll decide to simply accept some risk kasi there are some risks na hindi maiiwasan or inevitable. So you don't have any choice but to accept and just to plan ahead kung ano yung maari mong gawin or strategies para mas ma-reduce pa yung impact of that risk. So that would be my report. The next topic will be reported by Miss Baring.
Yes, this is the last part. So good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello.
Last part.
Yes. So my report is about venturing into stormy seas. So venturing into stormy seas is a concept. It's like a concept of building a strong foundation to start business na baligihan galing tulad siya ni Michael Mamas ba yun? Wait lang. Ni Michael and Mamas. So, he developed 5 principles. Next slide, please. So, the 5 principles by Michael Mamas are: keep your eyes toward the distant shore, stay flexible and resilient, keep the boat afloat, steer clear of the sirens, beware the serpents. So, in the keep your eyes toward the distant shore. So in the business, when you are in the when you're in the middle of the sea, so palagay natin na naglalayag tayo. So ang boat kay mo na siya ang business nato. So bali ang iba nato sa middle shore tapos naglayag ta. So atong goal kay makaabot sa distant shore. So ang shore atong goal. So so you need to remain steadfastly fixed and dedicated to your larger goal, even as it may change direction mid-course. So, diba, dapat mag-expect ka sa basta paglayag ka, mag-expect ka sa mga storms, sa mga obstacles na tumagian, and you need to focus. Next is stay flexible and resilient. So this is the important when you are sailing because there are a lot of challenges na magian mo sa pag-sail mo. So kailangan nato maging flexible, maging rigid, and focus ka resilient kay wait lang, nakulbaan ko, char. So, kailangan na to maging resilient, never lose sight of the great paradox of business. And so, in the business, kailangan na to maging flexible, di ba? And do not turn back at the first sign of stormy seas, but do consider changing your course to minimize damages along the way. So i-consider to nimo imong agian sa pag-sail nimo, like ang balod, anak gyud. Then ang weather, ang condition sa imong business. And keep the boat afloat. So keep the boat afloat is that you have to be maging stable ka. So not only must you keep your boat in the water, but also the water out of the boat. So during storms, your mission is to keep afloat with a steady hand with the tiller. So you do not always need to have the sail feel the wind. So yun nga, para kailangan din natin maging steady talaga para wait lang. Kailangan natin maging steady, consider natin yung mga risks para maging successful yung business natin. Then, clear of the sirens. Ang pasabot ani steer clear of the sirens kay diba there are a lot of friends na nag-say sa tuwa nga when you're starting a business nga, dili ni siya maging successful. Ay, down kay ni ka na, malugi man ka na, yun na naipadayon. So So, don't mind them and keep going na makaabot ka sa imong goal or makaabot nimo ang goal which is kung sa paglayag pa nato ni maabot nato ang shore. Then, the last one is beware the serpents. So, beware the serpents kay in the sea, yung mga snakes, yung mga pasabot nila, is yung mga ahas, char. So in the waters of business, they come in many forms. So some are friends or associates with thorn sour. So madaming, they will attack us, criticize, and abandon or disrupt you in several ways. But ikaw na nakabalo sa imong business, kabalo jud ka nga unsaon nimo pag reach sa imong goal. So padayon lang and ano and don't let them down, don't let them bring you down, and that's all.
Okay, so is it kuan na? Tapos na ang kuan? Okay, tapos na. So, can you go back to the last slide? The previous one. Katong sa shore. There. And please post your kuan ha. PowerPoint sa to ang GC, sa to ang Google Classroom later. So, keep your eye toward the distant shore, no? So, sa business pa, you have to have an eye sa imong goal. So, dito lang dito dapat ato ang focus, no? Sa pag-reach sa to ang goal sa to ang business because ang goal man good na to is the foundation of our business or kung asa padulong ato ang business. So, you must stick to it hantod sa hantod. Kay para, even though naakay makasinati ng mga circumstances sa imuhang pagpadagan sa mga business, you will not easily give up because you have that goal in your mind. Then, you have to stay flexible and resilient because as what to Artlin said earlier, daghan ta makasinati ng mga challenges along the way in building up our business. So, you have to be flexible na unsa man ang imuhang maagihan ng mga circumstances is that naa kay mga ways para ma-redirect nimo to siya ng mga challenges. Makapangita kag mga solution and you have an open mind to do that also and you have to stay positive no na ma-clear ang imuhang mind na dili ka malugmok sa imuhang circumstances or challenges na ginakaharap ana nga business. That's the reason you have to keep the boat afloat. So, being flexible man good, in business na perspective, with the help of being flexible kay bisan pa og unsang mga challenges imong ma-face, you will look for a solution that that your business will keep on running pa Japan in spite nga na kay mga challenges na ginakaharap. Like even kinabagyo na ang imuhang boat and whatsoever na ano yung mga tubig na sulod sa imuhang bangka. But being flexible kay even nagagunit ka sa tiller, nagagunit ka sa wheel dara sa sa imuhang bangka or whatsoever kay nadapon kay time nga habuaon ang tubig nga nangasulod sa imuhang bangka while nagabagyo and all. Nga na. So mura kag entrepreneur or mura kag captain sa boat nga unom kabuk ang imuhang kamot. Possible na siya class pag nag-business ka. Then, steer clear of the siren. Sa business man good, katong giingon ka na ni Arthur, nadyan mga ingana class nga, i-down dyan mo og taman nga, uy, ayaw na, ay, pangit man ang imuhang kuan, gusto ipatukod ng business, malugi ra ka ingana. Actually, ingana pod ako ang pinakasaklap gani kay family member, ang mostly ang mag-ingon sa mga ana nga ayaw na sila nga business kay malugi ja po ka wala panyam natukod imong business class lugi na ka ana good perspective. So if you have kuan jud na jud dara imong heart nga business mao jud na ang ginasigaw sa imong heart and mind, then go for that business. At least you have tried, no? Ikaw mismo makahibalo along the way na ug makaya ba nimo or dili. Not other people will tell you nga dili nimo kaya. And then beware of the serpents. So same lang na sila sa sirens and whatsoever mga pagsubok sa ato ang mga challenges ng mga people nga nagadown sa to, or eventually at the end of the day nga nindot kayo andagan sa mga business, daghan pa kayo kag kauban sa mga negosyo, but eventually nga makasinati ka og mga challenges or kanang kuan kanang malugi na ba or whatsoever, or palugi na imong business kay mga wala na lang ang kuan ang imong mga kauban and mga partners or katong mga tao nga naalang sa nindot nga kuan sitwasyon, pero ibiyaan kapag nagkagubot na ang sitwasyon kana. So beware of the serpents. So I think that is all for today's discussion. So thank you so much for the reporter for discussing all the kuan the topics na clear and concise also. I hope that everyone kuan no nasabtan ang report. Actually, sabotable kaayo ang pag-report ani nga discussion. So, good job sa mga reporters.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, welcome. Pa-post ko ani sa kuha na PowerPoint niyo para na-copy inyong classmate. And also class, di ba na atay meet nga kuan 7 to 8 supposedly later at night? So na dapat
Yes,
for
ma'am.
your activity time. I want you to I want to call you later for a Google Meet. Please read and understand your SCP module for week 1 to 4. I really have to take a short oral quiz for you for the week 1 to 4. So please be prepared na lang later. I have to get the 7 to 8 na class later. Just today kay mag-apas na ko sa quizzes kay wala pa ta nagkaroon ng proper quiz, ha? 7 to 8 later.
Copy, ma'am. Copy.
Okay. So, see you later at 7 to 8. Mag-open na lang ko o question and answer portion dito as sa kuan sa to ang Google Classroom if naay mga classmate that still want to have a clarification regarding sa town topic kay basig na apay mga clarification. I'll just leave a question and answer portion sa Google Classroom later. Okay?
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Please. See you later.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Kaya, yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you po.